There's your intro.
People are intro fishing now.
Welcome to Frackulous, a technology podcast for humans. Episode 335. MiniDisc mysteries, test-driven development, and David on Newsround.
I apologise if it's a little bit echoey in here. I've been having a bit of a clear out in the office. I think a bit of office reorganisation needed to be done because I'm getting lots of kit in. Got a couple of soft boxes in the background and stuff, and it was all getting a bit too cluttered.
Hang on, have we done that thing where we've started again? And I just don't think we've started, and we're bantering, but Will's going to totally use this as the start. Is that what you've done, Will?
Once we've rolled, anything goes.
Man.
You get Final Cut. You have to listen to it before it goes out to do that, Jeff.
All right, well, hello. I dip in. I dip.
Anyway, so I've been having a good clear out in here, so hopefully the echo doesn't come through on the mic. I'm not the only person who's been having a bit of a clear out, though, am I, Will? I see you've been clearing some drawers out and finding all sorts of goodies.
Well, that was an inadvertent clear out. Do you want the full story?
I would love to hear about your journey of mini discovery.
Are we talking MiniDisc, the greatest format ever?
It may lead to a MiniDisc, but let's not jump ahead, Jeff.
I think David's scoffing the fact that MiniDisc is the greatest format ever.
It's a topic of conversation, certainly.
So, I was actually, the night I was wrapping up the homebrew and I was bottling the beer, about 1:45, I'd got a tea towel out of the bottom drawer and I thought, oh, that doesn't close. Went to shut the drawer, wouldn't shut. This has happened before. Stuff's fallen down the back. So I had a little look and I saw loads of stuff, loads of boxes and carrier bags and strangely some Minion straws. Pulled it all out, dumped it on the worktop, and then I noticed something sticky. And I thought, oh, what's that? That's a bit weird. And it was silver. It was like this kind of silver, like insulation tape kind of thing. But stuck to the back of it was some sort of disc. And I peeled off the tape, and it was an 80-minute MiniDisc. And the tape was kind of positioned as if it had been taped either to the back of a drawer or, say, to the back of the cabinet.
Oh, hang on, so is it not your disc?
No, it's not my disc.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I thought it was your...
So this was in a piece of furniture that was there when you moved into the house?
Yes, we obviously
I see.
I haven't been down the back of these drawers since we moved in.
Well, that ups the whole level of intrigue on the game.
You obviously didn't read very well.
I just assumed it was your MiniDisc but you discovered it like 10 years later or something.
So I'll refer you to tweet 6, which was a disc.
Listeners, the tweets have been numbered. That is a
disc,
thing.
question mark, that had been taped to the back of a cabinet, question mark, by someone that used to live here, question mark.
Now, this tweet, or this thread of tweets, I've lost track of how many tweets are in there, but it's one of the most epic threads, kind of Twitter storytelling threads that I've seen in an awfully long time. So I certainly applaud you for keeping this going for so long.
Thank you. It's still going. We still don't know what's on the disc. So we're a current status.
The disc is in quarantine, right?
No. The disc is fine. I'm pretty sure it's been there at least 3 years. It's got no coronavirus on it. So I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday I found the disc. Then on the weekend, I had an inkling that our mini discs were in the attic, in like the loft eaves, and I was giving a 50-50 chance of the mini disc player being in there with them. So I dug that out. Nada. Definitely some mini discs, some tapes, some VHS, some other stuff, but no mini disc player.
It was impressive what old tech you did still have, wasn't it? You haven't got old tech.
We haven't even scratched the surface of what old tech I've got in my house, Jeff. And so then my next best guess was the portable small tech cabinet and went through all those drawers, not there. And I've run out of time. I have a couple of other options of places to look, I think, where it might be, but it's getting further and further into the boxes of stuff.
What minidisc player did you think you had? Where were you looking for? Was it a kind of portable,
portable
Walkman style one? Right,
yeah,
okay,
it's a MiniDisc Walkman. I bought it for Beck when we kind of first moved to London. I'd been in journalism a couple of years. MP3 was taking off, but I felt it wasn't quite there yet. And actually, a minidisc player was the easiest option at the time for creating high quality compilations.
I remember this time. It was early 2000s, around about the time that I got
about
my
2002, I think.
Yeah. I got my first minidisc player then, and the minidisc player I got was a Sony one, obviously, but it was one of the first high MD versions. It was this disc that you could put data on as well. It fitted a whole gigabyte onto a single disc, and I only sold it maybe 4 or 5 years ago on eBay for a decent price. I have to say, I did.
That's unfortunate. So one of my questions now is, I'm thinking there's only audio on this disc, but you're telling me it could actually be data.
Depending on the format of the disc, yes. I think they were either 350 megabytes or up to 1 gigabyte.
I think originally minidisc was about 480 megabytes because it was compressed, and a CD was 650, and because of the ratio of compression, they could bring that 1 hour down.
Was it not called 8-track compression?
Yes, it was 8-track compression. But the interesting thing about this disc is it's an 80-minute disc, which was basically brought out by, I think, reducing the track pitch. So they basically spin the spiral. On a mini disc, there is a spiral of dots, and if they make the spiral tighter, they can fit more on the disc, but obviously the problem is there's much more chance of errors of the laser dipping into the wrong channel. So 80-minute disc came out later on. So that could also age the disc.
Is there any writing on this disc? Anything apart from the insulation tape stuff on the outside? It's just a blank
It is unlabeled.
disc.
It's in a protective sleeve.
Okay.
It's a Maxell XL280 Pro. But as with all of these things, that Pro name may mean something or not mean anything.
So this is an important disc. I mean, let's just speculate for a moment, because it's fun, about what must be on that disc for the previous owner to have gone to the trouble of packing it up so carefully in kind of like an insulation bag, like you say. Clearly they wanted this, A, to be kept secret, otherwise they wouldn't be taping it to the back of a drawer, and B, for it not to fade, or, to be as shielded, as sheltered as possible. Because, when you're storing stuff, rewritable stuff on a mini disc, it's not going to last forever if you don't look after it. So there's clearly some importance to the person, anyway, who put it there on this disc. Question is, what will it be? So you've been trying to find somebody with a mini disc player so that you can put this in, I take it.
Somewhere in our house there is a mini disc player. Currently it's proving difficult to find. I have had some offers, very kind offers of people, somebody who has two, who's quite close to me right now.
Hey, Will.
But a friend of mine, Daisy, was so intrigued as to what was on the disc that she immediately, on reading the thread, went into she sent her son into the loft to go and retrieve her mini disc player. So this morning, on the behest of Twitter, we went straight to Daisy's during our 1 hour of exercise. We delivered the disc. We delivered a bag for her to place the player into, and then we retreated a good safe distance. She placed the player inside the bag, she shut the door, and I retrieved the bag. And the player is currently in quarantine in our basement where anything that enters our house has to enter a 3-day period before it is allowed to be touched by anybody.
3 days, starting today.
3 days. Starting today.
Starting
today about 9:30, because that was when I got back.
So just counting forward from today, perhaps around about the time... Well, I'm not going to hear about this, I presume, unless you put it out on Twitter, which I hope you will. That'll probably land at around about the time that this podcast goes out as well, more or less. Possibly.
Who
I'm
knows?
very
Who knows
excited.
if it will ever get edited, David? As we know, it's only when it's released. It's released.
This is three recordings in a row, 2 releases in a row. As Jeff says, there's a pattern going on here already.
It's like we've got nothing else better to do.
Oh, I have lots to do.
How's your list of things, Will?
Do you want to know how many unticked items there are on my to-do list currently?
This week, David,
80.
I came up with an excellent new app suggestion for Will.
Mm-hmm.
The app is called Behind, and what it does is that it notifies you on how far behind on things you are. So it lets you know how many days behind Twitter you've yet to read.
So at one
how
point,
many emails you're behind on.
At one point, I was 1,000 tweets behind.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
And
how many podcasts you're behind on?
I'm okay
that's
at
always a
podcasts.
worry.
I'm keeping up on podcasts. That's the one thing I'm managing to keep up on. But everything else, yeah, I'm gonna have to. I'll write that app, Jeff.
It's a great app idea. Yeah, copyright me.
It's not the idea, Jeff. It's the implementation.
Well, all it has to do is take your notifications from all other apps and then just sort of give you a sum total of all notifications saying you've got all these things to catch up on.
Because if you don't have enough anxiety in your life, here is some extra.
Sounds like a perfect app for today. Perfect app for today.
Waiting to happen.
So basically, where we are currently with this story is we are waiting for the quarantine to expire on the MiniDisc player, while also, if I get some spare time, I will go hunting further for our MiniDisc player.
You did find the bag for your MiniDisc player, am I right, when you were going through your junk drawers?
Well, it could be, because it is a Sony MiniDisc player, but it could have been a Sony bag for something else. It's not certain. I thought I found a power supply as well, but I couldn't find it, because also I've since found my old Sony book reader, which is just here. This is through going through old tech. This is the Sony portable reader system PR505, which is one of the first e-ink displays. And I thought I'd fire that up, see if one of my children could use it for reading books on. But it ain't got no power supply at the moment, and it doesn't take USB. It takes one of those, the period pre-USB charging.
Yes.
It wants one of the circular chargers, so I need to dig that out.
How
It's been
exciting.
quite a time for old tech and nostalgia in this household.
I can only imagine. You're a bit behind on your things to do list, Will. I guess a bit of follow up because of your course. How is that going? How is learning to program?
This episode of Frackulous is brought to you by ExpressVPN, the easiest way to protect your online privacy. So easy, even a human could do it. ExpressVPN secures and anonymously anonymizes your internet browsing by encrypting your data and hiding your public IP address. Turning on ExpressVPN protection only takes one single click, and there are easy-to-use apps that run seamlessly in the background whether you insist on using a tablet, phone or computer. ExpressVPN is rated the #1 VPN service by fellow humans at techradar.com. ExpressVPN has a special offer just for humans that listen to Frackulous with their ears. You can get 3 months free without paying any money if you sign up for a 1-year package for a year. To sign up for a 1-year package and get 3 months free for free and to show your support for the show, sign up at frackulous.com/expressvpn.
Because I know the first proper week was proper work.
Yes.
Yeah, because I've got some website questions for you already. So
Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
You can see the kind of despair in my voice there.
Yeah.
It's going well. The hardest thing at the moment is this concept called test-driven development, which is what we're learning. And apparently, it's what separates coders from professional developers, is test-driven development. And so the way it works is you don't write a single line of code until you've got a test for it that fails. And so you use this, we're using Ruby, so the main way of testing Ruby code is this system called RSpec. And so first of all, say if you're writing these things, there's a method, basically a method's like a function. So if you create a class, it can have a method. So if you had, I'm trying to think of a very quick and easy example. If you had a menu, you could do menu.dishes, and the dishes method would return all the dishes that are on the menu. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So instead of writing your class declaration to define your menu class and its dishes method, you would actually not touch Ruby code at all to start with. You would instead start an RSpec document, and your first test would ask that it would first of all say, does the menu class exist? That's your first test. And you have to, so first of all, you write it without the class existing. And the idea being you can just check your code really does test whether it exists. And then when it passes, and then once you know it doesn't exist, you then make it. And the process is called red-green refactor. So red is your failing test, green is your passing test, and then the third stage is what's called refactoring, which is making your code better. So you start off by just doing the simplest implementation to pass your test, and then when your test is passed, you can then make any changes to your code, and you can be confident that as long as your test still passes, your code is valid. So that's kind of the whole methodology. So you first of all ask whether a class exists, you pass that. You would then check that your class responds to the method dishes, and it would fail, and you would then write your code to fulfill just the response. And so you build it up and build it up, and you're changing one thing each time and making sure it always balances. So it's always red test, green test, refactor. And it is a total pain in the ass. But it's how you make good, reliable, maintainable code.
And that's the key to all of this, isn't it? Like you say,
Yes.
It's being able to differentiate someone who's been through professional training to learn how to be a software developer versus someone who can hack together a few lines of code that they've copied and modified from somewhere else.
I mean, naturally, my inkling with anything new I'm doing is to find a podcast about it. So I've thrown myself into the world of developer podcasts. And one of the most interesting comments. Oh, they're actually quite interesting, even if you're not learning to code. But one of the best comments I found was someone who said basically code is both an asset and a liability. So
what do they mean by that?
So what they mean is that one, it's valuable. Code is valuable. Like the code that runs Facebook is very valuable. It creates a hell of a lot of money for the company. But it's also a liability because you have to maintain it. So the more code you have, the greater the expense of trying to maintain that code and that code base and making sure it runs and it's all interdependencies don't break it. So we're doing this thing called pair programming. This was in the context of that. And they said that the first reaction to pair programming is, won't people write less code? And the answer to that is, hopefully.
Less is more.
Yes. Efficient, well understandable, maintainable code. So everything we're doing is around that. And the idea is also that you can be thrown into any team at any time and you can pick up, because you can read the tests, see what it's meant to be doing, refactor code as long as the tests still pass, that kind of thing.
This is all very exciting and all very well and good, but have you written a program that prints "Hello World" on the screen for an endless
Repeatedly.
loop? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go to 10.
So we have these things called weekend projects where we don't pair programming. We just have to basically implement everything we've learned that week. And we've done 2 of those. The first one was to design an air traffic control system.
Oh, boy.
And it gives you what's called user stories. So I tell you what, let me just quickly pull up the user stories for the airport challenge.
So is this about responding to requirements and making sure that the piece
Yes.
of code that you write does what it's intended to do?
So one of the ideas is that if you are a developer, what will happen is somebody will interview the client, agree with them a set of what are called user stories, which are basically things the final system should do, but it's broken down. So let me just pull up the airport challenge here. Maker's airport challenge. And this is all on GitHub, but it may be private. I'm not sure. It may be public. Quite a lot of their stuff is public on GitHub. So I will read you the user stories. As an air traffic controller, so I can get passengers to a destination, I want to instruct a plane to land at an airport. That's user story 1. As an air traffic controller, so I can get passengers on the way to their destination, I want to instruct a plane to take off from an airport and confirm that it is no longer in an airport. And then air traffic controller, to ensure safety, I want to prevent landing when the airport is full. System designer wants to be able to make a default air capacity and change it later. Air traffic controller wants to prevent takeoff when the weather is stormy, and also wants to prevent landing when the weather is stormy. So you have to basically build a system that is test-driven, that satisfies all of those user stories. And then you have basically, so you may have heard of this term unit test.
Mm-hmm.
So your unit test is your test-driven, does it do this specific function? Does it respond to this method? That's a unit test. You also have what's called feature tests. And a feature test is things like how you would write your code. So you'd say airport, and then you'd pass it plane and land. Like you have airport, you have plane land and pass it in an airport. So that's kind of like a feature test. So you have to devise your feature test, devise your unit tests, and then make a system that fulfills all of that. And I spent on that weekend project a grand total of 22 hours.
Cool. Blimey. Did he get something that was robust and functional at the other end?
Yes.
Well done.
I was very proud of it at the end of it, but it took a hell of a lot of time.
If you're doing this virtually from home, how do they test your code? How do you sort of upload it and showcase it and stuff?
Are you aware of GitHub?
I am aware of GitHub.
So is that the same GitHub that's had multiple outages over the last week?
It's been out a week, yeah.
Yeah.
Usually about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock when we've been pair programming and trying to wrap up. Yeah.
What are you doing to it, Will? Are you breaking it?
Yeah, it's probably could be us breaking it. So the way it works is we have to fork their airport challenge repo. So we get our own copy of it. We then work on our own copy. And then at the end, you submit what's called a pull request, which is asking the person who's the owner of the project to accept your changes. So that's what signals to them that you've completed when you submit your pull request. And that's the way it would work in software development in a company. So you would basically take a copy of the code, you would work on it, and then when you think you've solved or achieved what you were planning to achieve with it, you'd then submit the pull request, and the project owner would then review your code. That's another important part. It's called the code review. And they would, check that it does everything that it should do, that it's good, that it's readable, and then they can either accept or reject your changes to pull it into their code base. So that's how you get marked on it. But there is no marks. There are no marks at Makers.
Everyone's a winner.
So that was the first challenge, and I spent far too long on it. And then second challenge this weekend was to design a takeaway system. And this one had to actually send out order confirmations via SMS.
Oh, cool.
And I looked at it, and looking at the scope of the challenge, and based on the fact I'd spent 22 hours the week before, and my aim was to spend less than half that amount this weekend, I instantly ruled out sending SMSs in my implementation.
Uh-huh.
I decided I'd make a class that could basically be asked to send a text message, but instead of sending it, it would just basically print out the message as if it had been sent.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I got to the end of the challenge and I still had time, I would then implement the actual functionality to send SMSs. And I spent 11 hours on that one.
Well done, exactly half the time. Well,
Yeah.
just under. Well done. Certainly a level above Hello World then. I take back my somewhat flippant comment earlier on, but I continue to be excited by your progress here. How much longer have you got before you're pimping yourself out as a web dev?
10 weeks. Do you want to know some of my project ideas? Because I'm keeping a list of these now.
So is there a big, at the end of this journey, is there a big kind of dissertation type project that you have to deliver?
So I think there's 4 or 5 projects we work on as teams. So I think by week 6, I think weeks 5 weeks are self-led learning. And then week 6 is project. Then week 7 back to learning. Week 8 is project. And then back to learning. And then there's like a 2-week project. So I think there's like 3 or 4 projects. But they're team-based. But
right.
So do you listen to the Accidental Tech podcast at all?
Nope.
It's one of my favourite podcasts. It's one of the ones I've listened to for the longest. Interestingly,
it's too many podcasts.
That's a good name for a podcast, actually.
Not enough podcasts.
More than ever. There's too many podcasts. In the world right now.
Coincidentally had a half-hour section. So basically, it's Marco Arment, who was the first programmer on Tumblr,
and also
now did Instapaper and now does Overcast.
Right,
the
okay.
best podcast player.
I agree.
John Siracusa, who is, I believe, a developer who works in healthcare, and Casey Liss, who used to work, I think, in a consultancy as a developer and has recently gone indie, doing his own stuff and consulting on the side. So they had a question from somebody asking, what should they learn to do if they want to be a programmer? And there was a good half-hour section where they basically said, if you do a project, you are ahead of 95% of the people who apply for programmer jobs. Apparently, a lot of people apply to be programmers who don't have the skills to do it. And they said, if you can have a project that you've done from start to finish, it shows, 1, you know how to do all of the bits on a software project, and 2, you've gone through all of these issues yourself and got to an endpoint. So I've got some ideas of things I'm going to build.
Are these things that are going to be useful for your business or your interests?
No, they're going to be purely for my enjoyment first.
Okay, go on. Let us give us a window onto your mind.
So I have... So I'm going to have an app to record my homebrew.
Okay.
Because I need that. I currently use one and it's not perfect. But now I'm a developer, I can make it perfect. I'm going to... So what do you know about TikTok, David?
I have the app TikTok. I did an assessment on it for suitability for my family, and
Isn't it just Vine in for 2020? Like, what's the difference between Vine and TikTok?
Started off very music-y based, but yeah.
I maintain that TikTok is a unique media form, because it's all based on taking what someone else has done and doing your own interpretation of it. So a lot of the dances they start as somebody does a dance to a certain song, and then other people will take that and then add their own twist to it, and it's got its own stuff. There are like signature TikTok moves that people work in. And this weekend, in our slightly overachieving Zoom group, we did a variety show. And the people who tasked us with the variety show, one of their tasks was to learn a TikTok dance to be judged on the live Zoom. And my daughter desperately wants TikTok, but I will not let her have it.
Same here.
It's because it's not the kind of content that's the stuff that I think is original and that kind of stuff. It just seems to promote certain bad behaviors that get reinforced. So if you don't wear a bra and do a TikTok, you will get more notoriety. And I don't think things like that are healthy to be encouraged, especially among young children.
David, was your swing workout a TikTok or an Instagram? And also, David, tell the world about your swing workout.
This episode of Frackulous is brought to you by FreshBooks, the easy-to-use online invoicing software designed to get you paid cash money faster. Face it, humans, you are not good with numbers. If you're not a numbers human, sign up for FreshBooks and let them handle the hard stuff for you. FreshBooks users save 2 days per month on average, which you could spend doing futile tasks like talking to other humans and eating food in front of each other. In order to pay for these pointless activities, you are going to need money. FreshBooks lets you create invoices that look more professional than your substandard motor skills allow. You can even keep track of expenses, so you don't end up with negative money. Which is bad if your entire world is built on having it to survive. To try FreshBooks for free for 30 days, go to frackulous.com/freshbooks and enter Frackulous into the How Did You Hear About Us section, so that they know that we sent you and to show your support for the show.
Because it was brilliant. But actually, that's interesting. That I can't remember if it was Insta or TikTok. I just saw it and it went into my head and I enjoyed it. But I can't remember what platform I saw it.
It was a story, Instagram stories.
Oh, it was Instagram story.
Well,
okay. All right.
Before we go back to Will's programming projects.
It's all right, I've been speaking a lot. I'll be, jump in.
So this was a challenge on our street WhatsApp group. There was a challenge that was sent out. And at the beginning, I haven't put it on Twitter, but maybe I will share it in some way in the show notes here. I'll send you an original. Enjoyed it. Well, so it was this swing challenge where there was this. He must have been a fitness instructor or something. Was doing, I guess, what you might call kind of squats and jumps as a swing, a child swing that you might see at a playground swung. So he jumped over the swing as it came to him, and then as it swung back, he jumped onto the floor and repeat. So I've got some swings in the garden here, albeit quite small ones, children's swings. So I was challenged.
That was my main thought. It's like you're literally too big for this. Yeah.
I am literally too big for these swings. So the challenge came around. It was when the weather was quite nice, and I guess lockdown was still a little bit of a novelty. So we all went outside. My wife held the phone, and I said, all right then, I'm always a good sport for these kind of things. So film me trying to do the swing challenge. And, it was quite fun trying. I'm not going to say it was a complete success, but it wasn't a complete failure. But in any case, at the end of it, I had quite a lot of footage. And I chose to...
you fulfilled... there were 3 key parts to it, and you fulfilled all of them, but just not necessarily in the right order.
Yeah, a story of my life in a way. But yeah, so I thought, well, you know what? This footage is quite funny. Let's try and edit it into something that makes it even funnier. So I got a couple of soundtracks. I slowed a few bits down. I did a kind of punch in and a little bit of a cutty story thing. And to begin with, it wasn't an Instagram story at all. I posted it on my WhatsApp group, on my village street WhatsApp group, and
I
everyone
definitely
fell
didn't
about.
See it there.
Yeah, I'm definitely not on that.
Definitely not. But all of a sudden, everyone walking past my garden started waving and smiling at me. And when we did the 8 o'clock clap for carers, someone said, let's give David a round of applause as well, which was very embarrassing, but totally deserved. I then thought, well, okay, I'll put it on my Facebook in that case. I've got different social networks like we all have, and my Facebook is relatively locked down. And really,
that's
it's only
my Jeff.
Probably not. Only my friends are really on Facebook. I kind of keep that a bit separate, so it's not public. But lots of people found it quite funny, and I thought, okay, well, there's still friends who I don't have as Facebook friends, but maybe my Instagram stories might be a place to put that. So I thought, okay, well, let's turn it from a kind of 1 minute 30-second video into an Instagram story. And because I filmed it in portrait mode, vertically filmed, it kind of fitted quite well for that, and I put a few captions on it. And not that I'm measuring the performance of my Instagram stories for my personal account or anything, but people found it quite funny. So I completely forgot about it after that, but people keep on mentioning it when we chat on Zoom calls. So
how have you found the experience of Instagram stories and the editor? Did you put your text on outside the editor? Did you do it in the app? What was your approach? What was your workflow?
So I've been doing Instagram stories for a couple of, maybe longer than that, 2 or 3 years, really, but very, very sporadically. And because of some of the courses that I've been on and other mobile journalism trainers who I know who specialise in stories on various platforms, I've been really inspired by people like Caroline Scott, for example, who've got all kinds of workflows about getting videos and stories through those platforms and making them look absolutely amazing. And the top piece of advice that I've taken away from similar sessions in the past is actually do as little as possible in Instagram. If you've got other apps that make it a little bit easier, then great, and then just chuck them into Instagram, let Instagram chunk up those films or feed it in a couple of different videos in there, and that just seems to be about the best bet. So Instagram's got some interesting little filters and little things about location and time and so on, but if you want it to look really, really swish, then maybe don't do it in Instagram and do it in a third-party editor. I edited in LumaFusion on my iPad, and that's I'm getting quite handy at editing. Obviously, I edit using things like Premiere Pro, for example, but actually editing on an iPad, it's different, but still very, very powerful. I know we've spoken about LumaFusion before on here.
So I've kind of changed my approach to LumaFusion.
Oh, yeah.
So normally, if I'm going to make an edit, if I'm going to invest time in changing video, I want to keep that project around so I can then make further changes, or incorporate those changes into other things. So it's kind of like my entire workflow, as you guys know, when you work with me, has everything set up on Dropbox and versions of everything and all of that stuff. And I found that challenging to take into LumaFusion on a phone screen. So I've now taken a disposable approach to my projects, and I don't even name the project. I throw the footage in, I start chopping and chucking stuff off the timeline, and if it doesn't work, I put it back in again and start chopping again. And then
does that make you feel uncomfortable, Will? Do you get a bit jittery doing it that way?
I'm it came from when I started the Homebrew Instagram Story series. The idea was to try and do it all in Instagram, just to try and get a feel for doing stuff properly in stories. And I did about half of it, and I had a helper, which I couldn't find a way to delay the start of a recording, which was difficult to just get some of the shots I wanted. So eventually I had to tape some stuff outside the app and bring it in, which then became faffy. And so some of the stuff I had to chuck into LumaFusion to get it chopped up. And again, because it's going on stories, I'm quite happy with the result just living there and losing the project. Unlike the video I put on Twitter this morning about the delivery or the collection of the MiniDisc player.
Yeah.
That was a 5-minute video I chopped down to 40 seconds, literally, while I was just. It took me 5 minutes sat at a desk. And it's disposable. It kind of it's good enough to tell the story I need it to tell, to go onto Twitter, but I don't need to keep that project file ever again.
And that feels okay, you know, given that you've been working with a professional workflow in mind for so long. If it's for social, you've edited it, you've posted it, time to move on to the next thing.
I guess part of it is there's no client, so
you are the client.
So
yeah.
I'm not going to demand changes to my own Instagram content. So in that respect, I'm not a lot of my workflows protect myself against clients and their demands. It's more about basically being realistic about what I'm trying to achieve on my personal social media. But I still haven't told you about my TikTok idea, have I?
Go on.
What's your TikTok idea, Will?
This episode of Frackulous is brought to you by Audible.com, the premier provider of audiobooks. With over 180,000 titles to choose from, humans like to listen to things. If you're a human, you're probably listening to this podcast right now. Audiobooks on Audible are read by real live humans, often the same ones that wrote all of the words as well. Not only are you hearing the words written by the human, but you get to experience them exactly as they intended. Humans love listening to other humans. It is one of their favorite things to do, unlike Risk, which is good, because Audible is completely risk-free. If you don't like the sounds or words you're hearing, for any reason, you can exchange it for another without asking any questions. To start your free 30-day trial of Audible, which includes a free audiobook download, go to frackulous.com/audible, so that they know that we sent you and to show your support for the show.
So my idea is to create a curated version of TikTok. So I can go in and go, that dance is suitable, that one's suitable, that one's suitable. And then I can allow access to just those specific TikToks. So my children can watch them, have them loop, learn all the moves, but there's no chance of them stumbling across anything inappropriate. And also there's no way for them to upload.
There is another app, a junior version of TikTok that my daughter uses.
Is it actual TikTok or is it?
I'm trying to remember the name of it now. Hang on, just give me a sec. I think it was a version of TikTok that fell out of the was it the COPPA, the protection of child, the California online child protection thing. So they splintered it off. Hang on a sec. Oh, what is it?
Do you have any favourite TikTok apps, Jeff?
Not on it at all. I'm weaning myself off Insta. I'm purely going for just YouTube and Twitter.
I don't really
That's
consider
it.
YouTube social media. I think it's safe.
That's interesting. Then my only social media is going to be Twitter.
Okay, so you're going to
tell a lie.
Are you going to be a purist?
We run a little bit of Facebook, or mainly Vicky does, and I sort of dabble into it, but I'm not on Facebook. But I'm definitely removing myself from Instagram. It's just become an unholy, bloated mess. I got a friend, my friend Dave, which is fantastic. He's got like an old iPhone 6, so it won't upgrade to the latest iOS anyway. Mm. And he astounded me the other day when he told me that he doesn't let any of his apps auto-update. And he's literally...
I don't either, but I do them manually.
Yeah, no, so he does them all manually. And he is still running the version of Instagram, and he has an active Instagram account, but it was before you could do messaging. So nowadays you can message people.
God, I wish I could turn off messaging on Instagram.
Yes, and I bitch about the fact
that I don't like talking to people on there. It's just I never see them. Did you not see I sent you a message about 6 months later?
Yeah, exactly. No, so I have the same problem. Yeah, I have the same problem. And for me, Instagram should be a photo and video sharing app, and it shouldn't be a way to message people, because that's what iMessage or WhatsApp is for.
I would rather have messaging, even Twitter DMs.
I would take Twitter DMs over Instagram messaging. Yeah, so that it's trying to be everything to everyone. Now there's Instagram TV and stories all bolted on. Yeah. So I'm weaning myself off of Instagram. Not a fan at all nowadays. But annoyingly, I saw David's story and it was really entertaining to watch. So So
then Twitter's bringing out, what was it, Flutters? Fleets?
What? No. What are they bringing out?
So it's going to be... You must have seen this, David.
Is it like Twitter story? Is it
Twitter
stories for Twitter?
but they're text-based, and they disappear after 24 hours, and they're called fleets.
What?
Is that right, David?
When are they doing that?
I'm not going to lie. This is news to me. Well, I've been a little bit off Twitter the last few days as well. So, look, we told Will about the iPhone SE last week. So this is...
I know, right?
To Google Twitter fleets...
I'm doing it now.
Stories.
Twitter to start testing its own version of stories called Fleets.
It's a genius name.
The company announced today, and they disappear. Why Fleets? I don't get it.
Because it's fleeting. Fleets and tweets.
See, I thought of Fleet Street, which was for many years the street in London where all the newspapers, it was the journalist place for Fleet Street. Wow, it's starting in Brazil. That's interesting. Then they aren't non-public; they're just a little less accessible.
I mean, are you still tweetbotting, or are you official Twitter clienting?
I sort of float between the two. I mean, the only thing I miss on Tweetbot is the ability to answer to polls.
Well, even to see there's a poll.
Even to see there's a poll. But I've got quite good now at reading a tweet and thinking, that doesn't feel quite right. Oh, I bet there's a poll attached to that I can't see. Nipping into proper Twitter, tapping the poll, and then going back to Tweetbot.
I've done... did literally in the past 2 weeks, I've done 3 polls, and I've done...
I know.
They're my first 3 ever.
Well, you were someone this week that I was like, I think Will's done a poll there.
Yeah.
And in the back of my head, I was like, Will doesn't normally do polls.
No.
It's like, okay.
I was kind of...
And then I sent you that...
It was one of those...
And then I sent you that sarcastic message.
It was like, unless they open up the API so Tweetbot can have polls, I'm not going to participate in polls.
What I fully expect, Will, is for you to write, as your newfound web developer coder everything hat on, is to write... for there to be a Frack app which allows us to do everything.
Yeah. Well, actually, there is. I do have a little surprise planned for you and David.
Oh,
is there a Frackulous app?
It's gonna be so. It's
See?
gonna be.
I said it as a joke, but it's a thing, isn't it?
No, I've got a plan, and it's gonna be something not quiz based, but we can do a special episode that will involve this app when I build it.
Okay.
And it will be a challenge. And that's all I'm going to say. I've got an idea. I think it's going to make a good show. So
you just want to build an app, don't you? And then use it interactively as part of the podcast.
Yeah.
You've already started it, haven't you?
I haven't yet, but it's going to be...
But you've given it a name, haven't you?
It's one... Do I... Oh, it's got a name. Yeah, definitely. It's. But do I prioritise my daughter's TikTok content or your entertainment?
You stay up late and do both.
There's a poll for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So did you find that app, David?
Have a look at an app called Zoomerang instead, which may well be a safer version of TikTok for a younger audience.
Okay.
Speaking of quality...
I was literally about to make a note of that. And it just occurred to me, I'll hear this back in the edit.
Of course you will. Speaking of quality content creation, I know I was talking about cameras last time we spoke, and I've had updates there. But Jeff, you were also on the lookout for a new camera as well.
I let Jeff down terribly.
Oh, really?
With what? You let me down with what, Will? Oh, so I see. Yeah.
Last we spoke, I said I'd get you a box, didn't I?
Yeah, it didn't happen. No, I came good.
Oh, you've got something now.
So I eventually, about my 6th try, I'm so like winning on eBay. I forgot that it was a knack. You know how
it was terrible. Now
how to win.
We sold some stuff recently and people tried to massively scam us. It's terrible now. It's awful.
It has got quite bad.
Yeah.
But my main issue after winning is that the post then didn't turn up for 8 days.
I've got an eBay story, but maybe I'll save it to next week because I've been speaking a lot. I'll tell you my eBay story next week.
Can I do my Catherine Parkinson anecdote as well?
Only if we have time.
So my next day signed for webcam then didn't turn up for like 8 days. But I'm happy to announce, if you've been watching any of my live streams, with my new LED panel light and the new improved HD cam, my web streams now look pretty darn perfect. And you'd probably be hard to distinguish it from an SLR, I think.
So before you were shooting on with your webcasts, your live casts previously. You must be coming to about number 10 of those so far. You were using your camera in your computer. Your webcam?
No, it was just a cheap. It was just a cheaper Logitech webcam. It's a Logitech C270, but it's just the low end. But it's like anything in life or tech. If you buy, you get what you pay for, and it's worth paying the extra money to get the extra quality.
And
but
you've
the quality
now
was,
gone.
Was noticeably different. It was like, wow. It was like, it looked really good.
So the webcam you've got now, you've won on eBay, is a C920 HD Pro.
Correct. No, I think the 922 is the Pro, where they've tweaked a few things, but the 920 is darn good.
The 920 is the one I've got.
Yeah, it's solid. It's a solid quality build.
Do you know you can also? It's got a little quarter 20 thread, so you can put it on like a Joby.
Exactly. It has got a little. But
and it's also quite easy to fold up into various configurations to stand.
But whilst I'm on, so tangent, but related, can I often say I'm having a wine. I'm going to give critical feedback. There we go, not a wine. Because we're in a world where now people are using their webcams on Zoom and stuff. I'm really not going to name them, but there's somebody else that does a weekly webcam thing, and it's incredible how people are obviously as I would expect, they're using their webcam built into their laptop, right? Either the Mac or the Windows thing, and they're at the top in the middle. But the laptop is obviously at the desk, and they put the laptop on their desk, and their head is obviously above the laptop, and so they look down. And I scream at people. I go, put your webcam at eye level, so you're looking into the webcam. Don't look down.
Put your laptop on some books or something to raise it up to eye level.
Also,
exactly.
Yes.
It's also
oh my
just
God,
good ergonomics.
Please do that. It's so annoying.
The top of your screen should be at eye level. That's good
correct.
ergonomics.
It's so annoying. And then I saw one this week, an hour long, and this dude was like some BBC presenter. He's doing a thing, and he just positioned his computer, and it looks like he's kneeling on the floor, and then the window is behind him, so there's daylight streaming in. So the auto exposure is going. Well, there's some daylight.
Don't have a window behind you.
I'll expose that. It's like, how can you get that so wrong? It's like, people are they don't, and then people don't check to see what's in view behind them. So it's like, weird things on the bookshelf. Do a quick look. Just have a quick scan. Get rid of that embarrassing thing.
There was a really good picture I saw on Twitter today of it was a US TV station, I think, or a US TV network, news network, and they were interviewing somebody. I don't think he quite understood the framing. Maybe his framing on FaceTime or whatever they were using wasn't quite what was being fed through to the studio. But he was wearing a suit and tie and jacket, if I remember, and a pair of pants. And the bottom of frame just revealed some bare legs. And he was happily smiling. Yeah.
You could tell.
I think you sent me a picture like that once, David.
Yeah.
This may also be true.
You had a podium.
That's a really good memory. Yes.
Where was that? Was I there? What? Were you having naked fun without me? What?
I was...
Guys, I'm sad now.
Oh, gosh. I was called upon to do some very, very early morning television. I was in a hotel room in Amsterdam, funnily enough, and I had to get the camera at eye level and to get the lighting in this very, very dingy and dark hotel room. I had to set things up a little bit awkwardly. And yes, as far as I'm concerned, the viewers at home on whatever show it was back here had a good view, and I was perfectly attired. But the magic of TV.
Cool.
As the BTS shots showed. Nah.
Weren't you also on TV this week, David?
Oh, yes. I haven't had time to watch it yet. As you know, I'm behind on everything.
Well,
nor have I.
Bit of catching
and
up
this would
there.
actually nullify what I was about to say to Jeff was, can you text me about your live streams about 3 days in advance? Because currently I see them on Twitter and you've already done them.
I get a bell and I get an email notification whenever Jeff goes live.
The only channel I've belled is, can you guess?
The Frackulous.
No.
So that you know when we're live.
What channel that is very important to my life at the moment might I have done my
it's going to be something related to your daughter. It's It's going to be Animal Farm, whatever it was, Animal
David
Kingdom,
knows.
whatever that.
Maddie and Greg, let's go
It's
live.
Maddie and Greg.
There we go.
That's
Yeah,
my
there we go.
only bell.
And they're doing so very well now. I'm really, really pleased, and their Patreon has done very well for them as well. I think we mentioned that last time or the time before, that they were going along with that to try and make it work.
Supporters.
Indeed.
And also the colouring books. Children love doing those, the colorings. So yeah, great Patreon. Anyway, you said we were saying,
But you're on TV, David.
you were on Newsround. Tell us
Yes, I've been doing a
about
few.
that.
I've been doing a few TVs lately while we've been in lockdown, and one that aired last week and also again this week, I understand, is something I was doing for Newsround, which is a bit of an institution here in the UK. When we were growing up, it was John Craven's Newsround. Yes,
That's
and
the theme tune.
and the theme tune hasn't changed all that much. It's been a bit modernised, but it's a
You need
children's.
to hum the theme tune, David. Hum the theme tune.
Bum, ba-da-da-dum. Anyway, so yeah, I was asked to go on there and talk, just share some general advice for the age group, which is everything from 6, 7 up to 10, 11 or something like that, around how to use video chat apps like Zoom and House Party safely, because particularly when kids are in lockdown, not able to interact with their school friends in the same way, missing friends, missing family, and so on. Chat apps have been very, very important. But whereas one would think that adults have a modicum of sense when it comes to using these apps safely, and if if a stranger jumps on the call and makes things a little bit awkward and takes over the screen, that we'd know what to do. Maybe there's a little bit of advice there to share with children and their parents. So went on there, talked about that, gave a nice couple of minutes film, sharing some tips from my kitchen, and also because I've got a daughter who is the prime age that both of my kids love watching Newsround. They asked if we'd be able to do an interview with her about how she's coping with being in lockdown and being away from her friends, and how she's using technology to keep in touch. So we filmed that as well, and they've created 2 pieces of content out of that on the Newsround website. And my daughter is as pleased as punch, because everyone in my daughter's class watches Newsround, so she's really, really chuffed to be part of that. But coming back to Zoom for a second and external cameras, I was doing a corporate job hosting a web seminar last week, and I think we were talking about how I could plug in one of my HD cameras and use that with Zoom. Will, you spoke through your workflow. I
convoluted
got your fairly convoluted
not exactly
workflow.
user-friendly workflow, yeah.
So I got the same box that you got, the Blackmagic Design Ultra Studio Mini Recorder, and I've gone HDMI out of my Canon C100 into that Thunderbolt into my Mac. And I tested that when I got it with Zoom, and it looked absolutely...
You sent me an emergency text, didn't you, about this?
I was very, very excited and wanting to test it with somebody. So this was the day before. So I tested it, got my little studio with my background and with my lighting and with my teleprompter and with my talkback, got everything ready to go live on, let's say, the Wednesday morning. So I did that all the night before. And then I thought, let's just make sure I've got Zoom up and running, because one of the pieces of advice that I've been sharing to make sure that your Zoom is all secure and you don't get Zoom bombed is to make sure you're running the latest version of the app, because particularly at the moment... I
saw that on Newsround.
Yeah, exactly. So always make sure you've got the latest version of the app so that you are as secure as possible and things won't go wrong. So I did that. Then I thought, let's just test the camera one more time. And it stopped working. All of a sudden, I could no longer see any external cameras in Zoom. It just wasn't giving me the option. This is at about midnight the night before, and I'm now going into a bit of a panic. And at this point, I jump onto Slack with Will and with Jeff, and I'm like, guys, I don't know what I'm doing. It's all gone wrong. Help. So I'm like, okay, what's happened? Because it was working earlier on. Yeah. What are the things that I've done? And among the things that I realised is that I'd updated the Zoom app. And I'm like, no, surely that's not done it. Updating a Zoom app's a good thing to do. So I had a look through the release notes of the most recent versions, and I just saw a single line about how virtual camera support had been suspended. So I thought,
Right.
virtual camera, I wonder what all that's
What
about.
is it classed as a virtual camera? 'Cause
Well,
the Blackmagic is surely just a video input like any other, like a webcam or
you would
or
think
a
so.
Logitech.
You would
Like,
think
how does
so.
it differentiate?
I don't know how it differentiates. What I do know is that I had another application, the app that I talked about last time as to how I was getting stuff off my DSLR called CamTwist. And that also wasn't
party.
visible. Yeah. It also wasn't visible either. So it looked as though Zoom had just stopped everything that wasn't a built-in native webcam. I don't know how it...
West ruined it for everyone with its connotations.
So what I ended up doing, I did a bit of Googling around. There's surprisingly not very much about this online. It doesn't seem as though there's many people who are doing, or rather who are doing and sharing information about how to plug in external cameras into these conferencing apps. So I found one article, and that had some links to previous versions of Zoom, because I couldn't see how to get hold of the slightly older versions on the Zoom website.
How do you downgrade your Zoom?
Well, you just need to make sure that you've fully uninstalled it, which may be easier on a Mac than it is on a PC. I couldn't comment on that, but it wasn't that difficult on my Mac. I found some links to some earlier versions of the binaries that crucially were still hosted on the Zoom website, not hosted on some third-party site. Otherwise, you've no idea what you're installing. And, you know, I have been talking about fake Zoom installers that install crypto miners and remote access Trojans and so on. We don't want to go there, but these were slightly older versions that were hosted on the Zoom website. I installed it, and thank goodness I started to see the cameras again, and the feeling of relief that pulsed through my veins at that point was huge. So thankfully it all went without a hitch, and I had a decent quality HD feed for the web conference the following morning.
I have zoom.pkg in my downloads folder from the 11th of March 2020. Should I keep hold of that?
I would keep hold of that. And as I said to you, because I was at this point giving you a running commentary at about 1 o'clock in the morning by this point, over Slack.
I was still up. I was still reading Twitter. I'm behind. Have I mentioned?
But yeah, if you are feeding external camera feeds into Zoom, then read the release notes and keep an older version of the installer. Breaking news is that Zoom is releasing a brand new release, like version 5.0 this week, in response to a lot of the security flaws that have been found and a lot of the complaints over the last month or so.
And will that also re-enable external cameras?
I don't know, but I'm going to test and read release notes thoroughly before I install. There's lesson learned.
What would have solved your problem, David?
What would have solved my problem, Will?
Test-driven development.
Yeah, I
Is there
have.
an
If you
app
had
for
a
that?
robust series of tests, you would have known that something you changed exactly what the problem would have been.
You should probably build David an app, Will, that takes him through that step by step.
But David, I don't know how much time we've got left, but that isn't the only content that's been filmed from your kitchen recently, is it?
Why?
Oh,
I'm not
gosh.
as good as that theme tune as the other one.
Okay,
I've
well,
been waiting a whole hour to hum the theme tune.
so I've actually been doing a lot of filming from home. As regular viewers may know, or regular listeners may know, Rip Off Britain is a show that I've worked on for the BBC for a number of years. We were mid-season when all this kicked off, so I've had a number of pieces that I've been recording for Rip Off, where I've had producer on iPad and all the rest of it. A little web photography tutorial series as well has been making use of my kitchen.
That's an interesting one, isn't it?
Well, how to take better mobile photos. That's a very interesting one.
That's a great channel. I think there's some really great content going out on that one.
In particular, really creative content at the moment.
Yeah.
But I was asked to leave my house to go and film something else last week. So this is for a show in the UK that's called The One Show. It's a magazine show, goes out at 7 o'clock. It's an early
Rory
evening
Reed's
show.
been on that a fair few times.
He has indeed. Now, the bit that I was contributing to was actually called Watchdog. Now, Watchdog was it's
not a standalone thing anymore.
No, that's
It's
right.
now a segment of
What?
the One
Watchdog
Show.
is now a segment of the One Show.
This-
Really?
This is
How
correct.
the mighty have fallen.
So One Show
you-
started off as a segment of another. Sorry, let me say that
Oh
again.
my god!
Don't-
Watchdog
What-
started
shows
off
within
as a
shows within
segment
So many questions.
of another show, and then it spun off to be its own show back in the 1980s, and that was partly
David,
pioneered by Lynn Folds Wood, who sadly died at the
Yes,
end of
I
last
heard
week
that.
very
Yeah.
suddenly, who I met a number of times because she came on to Rip Off Britain a number of times as well, so that was very sad. But as part of as part of a lot of savings and budget constraints at the BBC, one of the things that they've decided to do is to cut back on some news where there was some perceived duplication, and Watchdog has been brought in-house into the One Show, which is an interesting move, but in a way it kind of comes full circle and it's going back to being part of another show. So I was asked
Did
to...
you get?
Sorry, go on.
Did you get the train down? Or did you drive down?
No, I drove down. I had
Okay.
because the One Show is part of a protected set of programming, public service programming. That means
Yeah.
that yes, you are allowed to leave the home and do it. So I went to one of the presenters' houses over in somewhere west of London, and we filmed and we filmed in the garden, which was lovely. I probably spent 2 hours driving down. Less than an hour there because, one take wonder McClelland, and then 2.5 hours driving back up because I had to charge
we will
my car
put
on the
that
way
your
back
next
up.
birthday cake. Yeah.
And then
grave, epitaph. Sorry.
that was due to go out on the Wednesday night. And then I got a phone call on the Wednesday afternoon from the producer saying, "Hi, David, really good job on Monday. Thanks for being so professional. The bad news is that we've had to pull the item from the show because you've been gazumped by Google." I think I know. So the BBC put in a bid with Google, and Google had just released a story a day or two before saying that they were blocking in the region of 18 million coronavirus spam and scam emails. And I should say that was what I was going on the show to talk about sharing some tips on how to spot whether an email is a phishing email and other coronavirus scams that are doing the rounds at the moment. BBC had put in a bid to Google, didn't hear anything back, so they went for their second choice, which thankfully was me. But then I think on the day of broadcast, early in the morning, Google did get in touch and said, "Oh, by the way, sorry we're a little bit late. We would love to work with you on this. By the way, we would also like to launch a new safety campaign with you. How about that?" So, do you know what? I would have dumped me at that point as well. So, sadly, that item has been dropped for now.
Will it never see the light of day? Will we never see it?
It may see the light of day, but then perhaps that horse has bolted. But there's a
is
couple
more
of other
likely,
items
David?
I'm working on them with
Can't
as
you
well.
get it
so-
and put it? Can't you ask for the package and put it on your own YouTube?
No.
David, which is more likely, that piece goes out or the unreleased episodes of Frackulous?
I guess it depends on how much people are willing to pay.
We should mention that survey, shouldn't we?
Survey? What's is this like a Twitter poll?
No, it's not a Twitter poll. It's a listener survey, which is
Oh.
something we were planning to do. Remember when we came back for 2 episodes?
Hang on, wasn't that a couple of weeks ago?
No, before that, the last time. So we've hit. So, as I remember, and it was a long time ago, in those 2 recorded episodes that never got released, we mentioned a survey. And we wanted people to go to. I'm just going to check the address still works. Give me 2 seconds.
Is this a CompuServe email account that you had set up for the
It is.
purpose?
Frackulous.com/ I'm guessing it's survey. If I didn't call it survey, I was an idiot. Let me see. Yep. It actually says at the top, I'll change this before it goes out. Frackulous Survey 2018.
Wow.
So I'll update that before this episode goes out. But we would like people to go to that link and only go to that link if they've heard of it in the podcast. So this link will not be linked anywhere on Twitter. It won't be linked in the show notes. You have to have listened to this point of the podcast and then still want to go to that address.
What?
That's about all we want to say
That
about
address
it.
again will be repeated at the end of the show. Yes. On screen now.
I was just asked a few questions.
Yeah, I was going to say, why? What do we want to know?
It's just to get an idea of why the hell people listen to this.
Oh, Christ. That could be a really depressing answer again.
And we want to hear from the people who listen to the end, basically, because they're the ones that matter. That's why it's here at this point of the podcast.
Are we
But
at
it'd
the
be
end?
really
Does that
useful if
mean we're at
people
the end?
can fill it in.
We have been going for an hour 10 minutes. I should point that out.
I know.
Why do I always feel like I'm the one that points out the time?
Because as you know, Jeff, I will release a 3-hour episode if you let me.
Yeah, which is why I'm pointing out that it's been 1 hour 10. Has it been 1 hour 10?
Yes, it has. Yeah.
It depends whether you want me to include that bit at the beginning where you didn't know I was recording or not.
Yeah.
I think we've covered our main topics once again. We've hit the big three there. We haven't covered the other things. Apple Watch at 5 years old.
Oh God, yeah. And actually, in the unreleased podcast, there was a whole section about my newfound love of the Apple Watch.
Yeah,
I'm still wearing my
I was
Garmin.
just planning. Maybe what I'll do is I'll cut that bit out and put it in here.
Let's lead with that next time. Let's lead with our watches next time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Should we lead?
Lead with your watch.
Lead with your watch.
Lead with your watch. There's a
idea.
title.
What else do we have here? Will Pokemon Go and my AirPods? Oh, my AirPods! Oh my God! I know.
We haven't got time to do your AirPods.
No, I know.
And I
They're going back
and
again.
I still want to bitch about Dashlane.
We haven't talked about
Maybe we need to start with that
password
next time.
managers then. Yeah.
Should we start with Dashlane and then do watches and then AirPods?
And then your Catherine Parkinson anecdote.
Well, maybe one day.
We've had people specifically requesting it, which is what we want.
Now we've cleared up the Mophie and smart battery case hangover. What else is there left to cover?
Join us next time for...
Have we not talked about Apple?
No!
Holy shit.
End of Frackulous. If your puny human minds can handle more, then follow on Twitter. @FRACKULOUS or individually. @David McClelland. DAVIDMCCLELLAND. Jeff Tech. GEOFFTECH. @Will Head. WILLLHEAD. Email your brains to hello@frackulous.com. Woke up this morning, closed in on both sides, thin doing. I feel resistance as I open my eyes. Someone's foolin'. I found a way to break through this cellophane bag, 'cause I know what's going on in your mind. I'm a living in a box. I'm a living in a cardboard box. I'm a living in a box. I'm a living in a cardboard box. I'm a living in a box.
This could be it. No, we did, because we mentioned the air charging pad.
No,
we didn't. That was in pre-roll, yeah.
Was it?
I'd have to dig that out of the pre-bit.
Maybe this could be the episode where we discuss no Apple products. Don't spoil it. This is the one.
I did mention my MacBook, but
Yeah,
that wasn't
we didn't
really
talk
the
at
focus
length.
of
We
it.
didn't
Not
have a
in depth.
section.
If this was an episode of Friends, it'd be the one where nobody mentions Apple.
Yeah. There's your intro.
People are intro fishing now.
I think we're good.
I'm going to hit stop.
I'm going to hit
I'm good.
stop
I've got
too.
washing on and things to do.